Hello. Hey, everybody. Happy New Year to all of you, and welcome to our CC call, the first one in this new year. We're hopefully having a better year than the last one was, but actually at this moment it was a bit not looking like this. We have our start with the European burning issues, and I think the first issue we had last night, and I think we have to talk about what happened in Washington yesterday. Perhaps, Yanis, you would like to start about talking about that.
Well, proto-fascism entered the town of Washington, D.C. On the streets. Up until now, it was only making appearances via limousine or, backroom politics. I'm not going to say anything that people don't know. Trumpism is on the rise. We've said this before the New Year's when we were commenting on the Biden rather slim victory, that Trumpism is going to get stronger. They got 71 million votes, many, many more votes than in 2016. The left mobilized to defeat Trump, but the split between the oligarchic establishment supporters of Biden and the left is getting stronger, whereas the Trumpist right is becoming more united. Today we came out with a statement that DiEM has fought Trumpism and the Nationalist International from day one in 2016, when 5 years ago we created and inaugurated DiEM25. We will keep fighting against Trumpism, but also we're going to be tough on the causes of Trumpism, which is the oligarchic establishment that present themselves as liberal opponents of Donald Trump. My great fear is that you saw today Donald Trump effectively threw the towel in. He announced he was always going to do that. I always knew, I was absolutely convinced that he was going to create a lot of noise before Biden's inauguration, but by the 20th of January, he would withdraw, not with dignity, but just withdraw. And then we would have President Biden, which is what we're going to get. From the perspective of DiEM25, but also the Progressive International, but primarily DiEM25, because DiEM25 is more coherent. We are in serious trouble. And we're in serious trouble because, the demise of Trump, while Trumpism is getting stronger, is going to be presented by Macron, Merkel, the European Union establishment, and so on, as a great victory of democracy. That things are improving, that populism has been defeated, that the European Union now has a common debt in the, recovery fund, that we live in the best of all possible worlds, when in reality, the forces of deflation and the forces of aggression are stronger and stronger and stronger than ever. And it will be very difficult for a voice like DiEM's to be heard over the cacophony created by, on the one hand, the Trumpist, Nationalist International, Salvini, Le Pen, neo-fascists, and that of the liberal establishment. So 2021 is going to be a very difficult year for progressives in the United Union, in the United Kingdom, in the United States, in places like India and Brazil, in Latin America. And in other words, at a time when progressive politics is more necessary than ever, our job is going to be is going to be harder than ever. There is nothing to celebrate. Was that sufficiently downing?
No, I can go more down if you want, as usual.
Yeah, perhaps Rechka, you want to add something, because the US is a topic or a subject anyway for you as well.
Yeah, just quickly, I of course share the analysis of Yanis, and I think what we've seen yesterday as bizarre, and many people are saying surreal, Some are even saying situationist, and it was a kind of right-wing situationism, what happened yesterday. It's still very worrying, because I think Yanis is right when he says that Trumpism is nearly not finished. Actually, I think this is just the start of something what we might call Trumpism, or a postmodern version of fascism, you know. And in that sense, with this year, which started 2021, I think we are getting much closer, not to the postmodern 1930s, but to the postmodern 1920s. You know, 1920s as a parallel in the sense you had the First World War, then you had the Spanish flu, and then you had the crazy 20s, which I'm not going down now, I'm trying to lift you up, because the crazy 20s wasn't just Hitler giving speeches in pubs, looking ridiculous in the same way these guys with an Auschwitz t-shirts maybe look ridiculous to someone, although they look very worrying to me, and the Viking guy and so on. I think Hitler looked the same at that time in a Munich pub, and that was the start of the 20s. And what you have then, because of the huge unemployment, hyperinflation, people who came out of war, at least we didn't have a world war yet, you had the fluctuation, accumulation of conspiracy theories, and you had this radicalization. So I think what we are now encountering is this kind of period of our 20s, you know, where we are still not in a world war. We still don't have this kind of fascism in power yet, and something worse than Trump might come. I think that's our point, that, you know, Trump is nearly not finished, something worse might come, and is coming precisely because of the democratic establishment, which will be represented by Biden. But at the same time, I think the good news is that there has been a split in the Republican Party. I think definitely. So there is not just a split in the Democratic Party, but there is also a split in the Republican Party, which is good. And if there is a lesson of the 20s, of the 1920s, it is that besides fascism, what you have rising is the workers' movement, arts, literature, cinema, movies. I think what we are encountering now, what we are entering, is a phase of creativity. As naive that might sound, I think that there is a big hope in this. So the struggle is not decided yet. So it can go in both directions. And I think for DiEM25, it's very important to keep the connections and to strengthen the connections with our friends in the United States. And for the United States, I think what is important, besides just requesting impeachment, removing, and so on, is to build a strong anti-fascist front. I think that's really important, which is not just the Antifa doing selfies or whatever, but really an organization throughout the country. You're muted, Claudia.
You're muted. Claudia, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Do you think Trumpism? Yeah, there's a question from the community on YouTube. Perhaps some of you would like to answer. Do you think Trumpism is more unique than other right-wing populist movements, as the Republicans helped create Trump by ceding so much power to one individual? Does anybody have an answer on that?
Well, very quickly, I don't think that it is unique. I think that they're very much alike. Whether it's Bolsonaro in Brazil, Le Pen in France, Modi in India, you know, the idea of the strong leader to whom the poor cede power in exchange for protection. That's the model. And they do provide protection in a way that the liberal establishment doesn't. You know, higher payments. You know, Trump gave them quite a little bit of money during the pandemic, and he was trying to push the Democrats to give them $2,500 American dollars to every family. You know, like Mussolini in the 1920s was the first European leader to introduce universal pensions. So they do look after, to some extent, the weak in exchange for complete subjugation. That's the fascist model, and you know, Trump is just typical of that. The difference in the United States is that, if I'm allowed to say, it's a very violent society. So much so that poor people, blue-collar workers, good people, genuinely good people, are violent to themselves. I mean, I lived for a few years in the United States, and I was astounded to encounter salt-of-the-earth people, lovely people, wonderful people, in bars and, petrol stations in the middle of the desert, truck drivers, people who had next to nothing, people who were destroyed by the lack of Medicare, of health, of public health. They were destroyed, and they hated Obamacare, and they loved Trump. And they were not bad people. They were not fascists as individuals. They just had this violence, this anger, which was violence to themselves. They consider themselves unworthy to have public health. Now, if you don't understand that, then you don't understand Trumpism.
Thank you, Yanis. Perhaps this may have answered the question. I would like to, there's another question, I don't know, perhaps someone of the female members would like to answer. Hello, fellows at DiEM. Is it possible we could discuss what is regarded as crypto-fascism surrounding the rising embrace of stateless currencies such as Bitcoin and sympathy for it by libertarians? I don't know if any woman would like to answer on that. Is there answer possible, or?
Renata is not with us, is she?
Yeah, and I remember Adam Curtis once said to me, "Why is it always men who speak when it comes to Bitcoin?" So I will shut up.
Judith? No. Yanis,
come on, you did. You answer that.
She doesn't want to. So Yanis, it's again.
No. Let's send this question to Renata and insist that she answers next week.
Okay, fine. Speaking of Renata, I would like her to talk about Julian Assange, but as she's escaped now, I would like to ask someone else for the next point, which is Julian Assange, because we had that trouble yesterday. On Monday, we had been happy very much that he was not extradited, but 2 days later, the bail was rejected, and now we are in the situation. Yeah, please, Sergio, let us know what you are talking about, thinking about.
Well, I think, of course, it was an emotional roller coaster ride since the first court hearing. What is happening now? I think what we have to do is really to continue with our support. The elaboration of the judge in UK was really disgraceful, to put it like that, because she basically just repeated the persecution arguments, basically saying that whatever CIA and the deep state of the United States has done to Julian Assange is not the problem, and it will be done again to other journalists or publishers. What is a problem is just his mental health. But then again, it was again contradictory, because she left him in Belmarsh prison, which is the main reason, besides the United States government, for his mental health. But again, the situation is nearly not finished yet. As far as I heard, Renata would know better, I think, Yanis as well. They are appealing to a higher court. And then, of course, there is little hope, but there is still some hope that the Biden administration might finally decide to finish this case once and forever. I don't know what is the how likely that is. I don't know, maybe Yanis knows more, but in any case, we have to continue our support. DiEM25, Julian is our advisory panel member from the very start, and I'm really happy to see that many DMers from Frankfurt, London, and so on are getting out to the streets, even in this pandemic situation, and supporting the case.
Well, let me add to this that, look, folks, there was never a chance that the case would not go to the High Court. There was never a chance, because, if we won, as we did at this court, it doesn't matter what the rationale is. The rationale is disgraceful, but nevertheless, we won. The magistrate's decision was not to extradite, whatever the reason. Yeah. So the other side would appeal. If we had lost, we would have appealed. So everything in the end would have gone to the High Court. I personally was very surprised that we won. I was not at all surprised that he wasn't bailed out. I thought there was no chance he would be bailed out, if only because they would want to make his life as hard as possible for as long as possible, even if they are going to release him in the end. They don't want to simply, just very quickly dismiss the case. I have to say, I'm really genuinely surprised that she didn't say send him over, because that was what her job was. Now, don't forget that the reason why we had all our hopes pinned on the High Court is because the High Court, firstly, comprises judges who've reached the pinnacle. They don't need anything. Their career is not in jeopardy. Whereas all the lower court judges, they look towards climbing. So they have a degree of independence. Secondly, they are far, far better lawyers, legal people, than the magistrates. And also they have a sense of self-worth. They are pissed off with the Americans. A lot of the High Court judges, I know that from within. I happen to know one of those people. And they have a long memory of British courts being treated with contempt by the United States authorities. There's hardly ever been any extradition from the United States to the United Kingdom, whereas the Americans always expect the United Kingdom to extradite to the United States. And there have been cases, a number of them, when even convicted murderers, just common criminals who had actually killed people, were not extradited to the United States on the basis that the supermax prison system is intolerable from a human rights perspective. So that's why I was hoping, assuming that we would have lost the current court case, which we didn't in the end, that the High Court could overturn it in any case, as they have done in the past with common criminals, right? And so the situation is much better. I'm not saying we've won, but it is much better because now the High Court, for him to be extradited, will have to overturn in the opposite way a ruling which cannot be overturned now due to the phrasing of the magistrate, unless the United States authorities prove to the High Court judges that his mental health is not jeopardized in the United States. Now, that will be very difficult. It's not impossible, right? But I think that things are not bad, all things considered. We would, of course, have liked him to be out now, to have been bailed. But it's not so bad. I personally do not pin any hopes on Biden ending the case. It's more likely that Trump will pardon him in the next few days than Biden not continuing with the persecution. Remember, it was Biden who called him a high-tech terrorist, right? And let's face it, our comrades in the United States, the left in the United States, do not have much to be proud of in this regard. They have not campaigned for the end of the persecution of Julian. None of them.
Yeah, I think it goes also to our comrades in United Kingdom as well, I would say.
Well,
especially
yeah.
among the liberals and those who are now very loud in supporting.
Yeah,
but
even our democratic socialist friends are not making any noises at all about Julian. They've sacrificed him.
True.
For their own petty politics in Washington, D.C. Let's be clear on this, right? I'm going to have a lot more to say about this. That will be very damning on our comrades in the United States. But I reserve those statements for after this case is resolved. Because, when we talk about solidarity, we cannot pick and choose and we cannot be eclectic to whom we show solidarity. Anyway, I better keep my mouth shut now. Let's hope that the High Court judges convene quickly. This is also important, because if this thing could drag on for another 2 years. Nothing stops the High Court from dragging this for another 2 years, by which time, there will be nothing left of Julian to save. But I do trust that the judges are going to convene within the next few months because they want this out of the way. And I also trust, I give it more than 50% chance that they will rule in his favor. More than 50% chance. And I am not these days the most optimistic of persons, as you saw before.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds depressing, but perhaps, our dear comrade Rosemary, you have something more positive for us. You want to?
I was pretty positive. I said more than 50% chances.
No, but I do think that it started a new stage of discussion around WikiLeaks in the UK as well. I think actually the mere fact that there's been some recognition that here is a human being who might actually suffer under the justice system has opened up possibility of discussion, because the silence before was dreadfully inhumane. It really wasn't thinking about Julian Assange as a person at all.
Yeah.
If I can add something on these topics, let me thank you, even all the DiEMers and not DiEMers who are supporting our Julian campaign every day. This is a long battle, and we really need the help of everyone. So I do believe, and I hope we can move on and keep going straight all together. We need the help of everyone. So really thanks to all of you that through our social and channels support this campaign every day. Really thanks.
Thank you, Patrizia, for your warm words. I really want to say the same to everybody. And we have a new petition online on the DiEM25 platform. So please share that and try to reach as many people as we can, because after releasing this petition, we have now 700 new DiEM members, because they all signed the petition for Julian Assange. And this is a great success. And I really would like to thank Judith for her engagement in that, to put this petition up yesterday, very short notice. Next point, Croatia, another thing which is not really one thing we should be happy about. Srečko.
Yeah, but I'm not going to bring you down. So just a short update from Croatia, because as you know, I'm finding myself now, which is quite unusual for the last decade, mainly in Croatia. So almost every day we wake up with an earthquake. Luckily here where I am, it's still fine. But one particular region of Croatia was really hurt by, well, not one earthquake. We had literally hundreds of earthquakes in the last 10 days. This region is around Sisak Petrinja, which is a region which was already pretty destroyed during the war of the 90s. Then for the second time, it was destroyed during the so-called transition period from socialism to capitalism by the ruling party. And now for the third time, it's destroyed by an earthquake. So I know this is not something new, especially for friends from Turkey or Guatemala or Mexico, who are kind of used to constant earthquakes. But for Croatia, these are the biggest earthquakes in the last decades. And obviously it won't stop. Obviously it's continuing. So what I think, if there is one lesson, and then I finish, I could speak about it, of course, longer. But if there is one lesson, I think, in an absence of an organized state, what we can see now in Croatia, because it's complete chaos again, you have a shock doctrine again, people are stealing resources from the people who are hurt there, and so on, and you already have politics capitalizing, you know, doing selfies, Instagram with the victims, and so all this kind of stuff, what is happening all the time. But if I think there is one lesson, the lesson is, and I think this should be our new normal for 2021, it is mutual aid and solidarity. It was amazing to see how many people in Croatia were driving by cars to this region to help out people, how much they assisted to one and each other, and so on, which I think for DiEM25, if there is one lesson, again, I would say, besides the electoral wing, and continuing in that direction. And we will, of course, speak about it and organize it this year more. I think one should be going a bit back to the anarchist tradition, if I may put it like that, which means mutual aid, cooperation, and solidarity, in which way we can, in a decentralized way, concretely help people by repairing their houses, by bringing resources, food, and so on. So yeah, the situation is really depressing in Croatia, but we are continuing. So yeah, let's hope there are no earthquakes anymore.
Yes, Istanbul is expecting a huge 7th grade earthquake very soon, it seems. And hundred thousands of buildings will be demolished. But the most important danger is the canal, which this government wants to open from Black Sea to Marmara Sea. This canal and not only going to separate the continent, European continent from Asia, but also it is will be a reason of a very, very significant earthquake. So in the coming months, we should also take this subject into our agenda, if possible.
Yeah, let's do that. Sounds good. Next topic, if no one wants to talk about earthquakes. There is something Rosemary would like to tell us about the new Putney Debates. Rosemary, the floor is yours.
Well, I think we are being challenged this evening to come up with some good news. And I have to say, I do think that the new Putney Debates, which we kicked off on December the 19th for our first discussion, was a really encouraging conversation between different progressive traditions, the Labour Party, the Green Party, People's Assembly, Stop the War campaign, the War on Want, the campaign for nuclear disarmament, DiEM25, Progressive International. We all crammed into one Zoom and spent 3 really decent sessions discussing 3 vital topics for us. The prospect of a Green New Deal in Britain, how to set about building it, the putting the demos back in democracy, a democratization agenda, and internationalism. And in each case, there were tensions, but there were very interesting synergies. And I'm glad to report that we are now working on a statement, see whether we can agree on some of the basic principles that we discussed, and that we're hoping that this will go forward and be a really productive and very novel type of conversation in the UK.
And if I may add to this, that all this, remember, was done under the aegis of DiEM25. These people would not have come together if it wasn't for us. This is, something that we really must congratulate ourselves for. No other movement had the capacity to bring the Greens, the whole leadership of the Green Party, together with John McDonnell, Jeremy Corbyn, the people from CND and so on. They were not on speaking terms. And Rosemary is right, there were tensions. There were moments of angst and actually, people confronting one another. But it worked therapeutically. I'm not saying that all the problems have gone away, but they managed to talk about policy to one another. And I had both sides writing to me afterwards, saying that they felt good that this confrontation happened, because now we can move on. And if we can manage to get them to agree on a statement that collectively we wrote, Rosemary, Justin, David Adler, some other people, it's 1,000 words, very succinct. We're very close to it. Jeremy Corbyn wrote to me today, inviting me to be on the board of his new institution, which is starting on the 17th with a big thing. And he's part of the Progressive International. So we are really forging an alliance. DiEM25 UK is getting a new lease of life. And we are, I think it's very important, given Brexit, that DiEM is disregarding Brexit. we are not a movement of the European Union. We are a European transnational progressive internationalist movement. We have people in Turkey, we have people in Serbia, they're not in the European Union. Do we care? No, we don't. We have people in Israel, we have people in Palestine. So we are going to continue along those lines. And as we are approaching the 5th anniversary on the 9th of February, we have to take stock of our failures, our successes, and our potential.
Thank you, Yanis, and it was very good to hear something positive at that point. And you made a nice overflow, because this is our next point on the agenda. It's the 5th anniversary, and Eric would like to tell us something on behalf of Ivana. She's not here, but you know what to tell us.
I do indeed, but I think Johannes wanted to jump in really quickly on the previous point, if that's all right.
Yes, I just actually, thank you, Eric. I just wanted to mention one thing. Since the 7th of January is the date that in Germany we remember as a date where we should remember the person Uri Jallo. He was a person of color dying in police custody in Germany, and we should express our solidarity with all those people in Europe that are victims of racist police violence. And Uri died in 2005 in police custody in his cell, chained to his bed, and he burned to death. So it was an extreme case, and it hasn't been really sufficiently solved in front of German courts. So we should raise awareness for this, and our solidarity with all people that are victim to that.
Thank you, Johannes, and sorry that we're back to bad news, but it has to be said. Eric, please continue with the good news.
Cheers, Claudia. So on behalf of Ivana, I have a couple of things to say, who is away because it's Orthodox Christmas today. So I guess incidentally also happy Christmas to our Orthodox viewers and followers and members. So in a month from today, 9th of February, we're celebrating Ivana's birthday, actually, incidentally, but also DiEM25's birthday. It's been 5 years, half a decade since we founded DiEM, or DiEM was founded. And I do believe we've done our best to make sure we kept astride with the political developments of our times. Unfortunately, in many ways, I guess that wasn't a difficult thing to do, because the kind of political forces and political problems that gave birth to DiEM25 in the first place are still about, where the political movement is as relevant as ever, if not even more relevant. Having said that, the foundational narrative of DiEM25 is 5 years old. The story on which we were created, born out of the completely inhumane and cynical treatment of Greece and of all countries that were hit by the economic crisis of 2008, by the establishment of the IMF, the Troika, and so on, is at this stage an old story, even though the repercussions of that story are still with us. So we've been discussing as the CC that it is important that we re-explore and rediscuss the foundational documents of DiEM25, if you like, from them, and especially the manifesto of DiEM. We've had a conversation about starting that process. We have had feedback from our members come in about what things they feel might be somewhat outdated, what is still relevant, and so on. It's been sent to those of us who are working on a new draft for the manifesto. And maybe those of you who are working on this might want to say a couple of words to this end. But we also have been discussing what we could potentially do to mark this anniversary, halfway to the DiEM 2025 mark, if you like. And I think it is incredibly important not to rush things, not to feel like by this deadline, things need to be finished. I think by this deadline, we need to be very, very clear about what it is that we're trying to achieve. And with this in mind, we thought with Ivana, we had this conversation, and what we'd like to recommend is to have an event, an online event, obviously, which is whatever Corona allows us to do at this stage, an online event inviting some of the key figures involved in drafting the original DiEM manifesto to an online discussion, together with some volunteers and members of DiEM25 who have engaged through their political activity and volunteering with the DiEM25 project for this past 5 years, and have a series of sessions, online discussions about what created DiEM, where DiEM is today and where the world is today, and where DiEM should be heading. And we think that this could be a very nice sort of marking point, milestone, if you like, for our movement that could very well feed into what the work that we're doing, both in terms of the 5-year plan that we'll talk right after this, but also the drafting of the new manifesto, instead of absolutely making sure that that manifesto is finished within the next month. If it is, fantastic. But instead of making that the focal point, I think an event to this end that could perhaps also instruct and enrich the reworking of the manifesto. That is what Ivan and I would like to recommend to you.
Thank you. Patricia, you had an idea.
Yes, just came up right now, and would be nice if you all agreed to make a sort of Zoom celebration for our DiEM anniversary, where we could all bring a glass or and a proposal for what we would like to do to move on DiEM25. Could be a proposal or an idea yeah, on how to do better, and that's invite yeah, why not, our supporters as well. We cannot do personally, of course, because of the pandemic, and that's really a shame, but we can celebrate in a Zoom way for the moment.
Yeah, I like the idea. It's a good idea. Yeah, let's have a party online.
I like both ideas. I mean, the one which came from Eric and Ivana, I think it really makes sense also to activate some of the original people from the first manifesto time, which was 5 years ago, which seems like a century ago. And Patricia's idea, we can combine. I think we can do both. I think it's a big moment. It will be 5 years of DiEM25. I think it would be useful if the office and communications part of the coordinated collective could also do a 5-year report, in the sense of, you know, with pictures and everything. What actually did DiEM do in 5 years? Because I think very often not even our members exactly know how many things actually we have done, you know, besides entering the Greek parliament, developing the Green New Deal for Europe, supporting Assange, all the actions, campaigns, and so on. There are many things going on. So I think it would be useful to have in this month to prepare this five-year report, and then to use our meetings and the online debates to look into the future, to look towards 2025. I think if we succeed to do that, it doesn't have to be on the 9th of, maybe we can just have one debate on the 9th of February, or we can have Patricia's format on the 9th, but then throughout February we can have these debates and have a month full of celebration. If we have remote learning, remote everything, we can also have a remote anniversary. Yeah.
Exactly. Good idea. Juliana, you as a bartender, you can mix the drinks for that party.
Yes, we can do a tasting, but everyone has to bring their own beverage. No, actually, it fits very well with the questionnaires I sent out to the DSC coordinators. And the last, I think the deadline is at the 31st of January. So I will have as many reports until then. I think it's 17 reports already, which are filled out. And maybe we can use also this data for the analysis. So we have also as well a report on the DSCs and on the history of the DSCs for February then as well. And I already asked people who will help me to evaluate the all the forums. So I'm positive that we will have them ready by the 9th of February, maybe. But as I understood, we will. The idea was to have several meetings, so we can have like a celebration on one day, and then we can have like a 5-year celebration the whole month, like February, and have different meetings for. I mean, it's difficult to talk about everything in just a few or one meeting, I think, because everyone will bring their own perspective. Like more people want to talk about the DSEs than other about more strategical topics and the manifesto. So I think we should keep in mind to give them all space. Yes.
Great. Perhaps this brings us also to the next point.
Beral, sorry, Claudia. Beral had her finger.
I think it is good to consider contemporary art production as an effective tool with famous artists. In voice meeting, we have discussed this too, using the power of contemporary art, visual art. And, you know, most of the time, these works are very political in content, in concept, also aesthetically is important. And young generation is looking to contemporary artworks as a vision for, not for future, but for the present time. So maybe in voice meetings, we can discuss a project, a nice project for this 5th anniversary.
Great idea. Yanis?
It all sounds good. It's awful that we can't go to Volksbühne and do something big there, because, you know, anything short of that is a countdown. But we'll have to do something good on Zoom. I undertook before Christmas to produce my version of a draft for the new manifesto, and I will do it. I will do it by the 15th, 16th of January. Folks, I can't do it before that. But you'll have a draft from me for whatever it's worth. While speaking, the reason why I haven't had a chance to finish that is, of course, because, you know, I was working on the new Putney Debates, you know, the manifesto for the DiEM UK, for, you know, the red-green alliance that we are doing there. I would have finished this, you know, I've got to prioritize. But while we were speaking, I opened my my directory on my hard disk, and I just looked inside the, you know, DiEM 1.0, because I have two directories. One is DiEM 1.0, which is from, you know, for the Volksbühne or before the Volksbühne to the European Parliament election, and DiEM 2.0, which is since the May 2019 European Parliament election. So I went into DiEM 1.0 and I saw my manifesto and I opened it and I found 610 files, of which, of course, you know, there were letters from, you know, organizing the Volksbühne event, and I found 8 versions of the manifesto, you know, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, all the way to the last one, which was 8.0. And just, you know, for historical reasons, let me tell you how it happened. Or remind those of you who forgot, and tell those of you who didn't know how it happened. It happened in August of 2015. I found myself in a field in between France and Switzerland, speaking to French farmers with Arnaud Montebourg, the former the guy who had the economy ministry before Macron. And it was there that I started thinking of a European manifesto. And then Srečko and I met a few weeks later at the Volksbühne in another event, right? Which was the beginning of the idea that we would book the Volksbühne and launch the whole thing. And, you know, I remember finalizing the first draft and sharing it with Srečko of the manifesto, and then sharing it with Arnaud, who was on board back then. And his team, he had a whole team, sent comments and there were other people like Anthony Burnett, who was involved in reading it, and Brian Eno, and, James Galbraith. So I have, around 40 emails that I got from different people around the world, not just Europe, on 1.0. And then there was 2.0, there was 3.0, but it was always, I would gathering all this stuff, writing it again, sending it over, getting more feedback, reading it again, thinking, oh, this is rubbish, I have to do it again, until we got to 8.0, and that was the one that ended up at the Volksbühne. I don't think we will need to do this because we're not starting from scratch, thankfully. But I do think that in my introduction to the document for the 5-year plan, I already included in there what I think needs to change. So just know, I'm giving you notice that I'm going to be working towards not doing the same prose, because what the introduction to the 5-year plan was not a manifesto. It was my pointers regarding what has changed since 2016 and what the new challenges that we face are. But, I think that it's going, to cut a long story short, I think that the new manifesto must be more feisty and more radical than the first one. The first one was a little bit too wishy-washy. The first one was a little bit too much concerned with building bridges between different traditions and bringing more people on board, people that didn't want to come on board in the end. They proved it. They didn't care whether they were liberals, not neoliberals, but liberals, or, people from established political parties that operate like machines, and they are inside the machine. They will never come out of the machine unless they are to use you, to share a platform with you, to gather a few more votes. So I think that the first manifesto was too poetic and too utopian and not sufficiently radical. The second one must be more movement-based, more aggressive, even more poetic, not less poetic, but more radical.
Yeah, we'll see what will be the next one. What is it then? 9.1? Or
Well, look, I'll try my best and give it to you, and you tell me what you think. And I'm sure that you will want to add things, change things, subtract things. And as Eric said, let's not make it absolutely certain that it has to be finalized on the 9th. If it is finalized on the 9th, fantastic. If it's not, and in any case, we have to put it to an all-member vote and blah, 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 that things we didn't have to do the first time around because we didn't have members the first time around, remember? We were operating in a vacuum. Now we have members. So, ideally on the 9th, we will have a document that we agree should go to members.
And members have also already sent us a lot of suggestions. So remember my email. So we can actually co-develop. They had a lot of ideas of how to change our manifesto, and they will see the next the version that you draft or that we agree on, and then we can keep developing it.
Yeah, but I have to warn you, a bit like I keep saying this, a manifesto is like a poem. It's not to be written by a committee, and it's not to be written as a wiki document, because then it's not worth having. It's not a policy paper. It is not, it is not a Green New Deal. Any poem written by wiki should be discarded before it's even written. So what we do is we listen, we hear, but then we don't write collaboratively. You cannot write collaboratively these things. Maybe, 3 people can do it, but more than 3 people cannot write collaboratively a manifesto that actually gets you here. The whole point of this thing is to get you here. If it doesn't get you here, it's not worth it, even if it has all the right points in it.
perfect. Talking about the next issue, if there is no questions anymore. So I would like to give the floor to Eric once again on the 5-year plan.
Very quickly. just to say I'm really, really looking forward to reading that new manifesto. That's what I'm going to say on that.
About the next issue, if there's
You muted.
Yeah, I think the host accidentally muted me. So on the, we've just spoken about the ideas that will carry us forward, but we've been working quite a lot on the structures that will also take us forward, on the kind of infrastructure that the movement needs, and that's something that we've been focusing on quite a bit for the past year. And now with this 5-year plan document, we've really shifted our focus specifically on the way through which our national collectives, so the bodies that do the national coordination of a movement, and our electoral wings, which are the electoral tools that the movement uses in order to push its agenda through elections, how those structures operate, in the same way that we look to the past and understand from some of the, part of the naivete, perhaps, with which we engage some of the topics. We've gathered some experiences. Our members also have gathered some experiences by trying to do the things that we used to have in place. And through this procedure, coming up with improved structures. We've already had some of those voted through, and now we're looking at establishing proper guidelines for helping those who are brave enough among our membership to take up the mantle of the coordination of the movement at the national level, whether electoral or movement-wise. For them to have a clearer outline of what it is that they're meant to do and how they could achieve it and how we can help them achieve it. So we have the NC guidelines that are being commented on by the membership on the forum. And we also have the guidelines for electoral wings, which we've shared with all of you on the CNC. And if there are no further comments on those, we will also be posting on the forum for people's feedback. We're hoping essentially to have both of those documents done and dusted by the end of the month, voted through AMVs, so that they become the official way through which these organizations, parts of the movement, can work. What I'd like to say on this point is that there's no predetermined outcome for times of crisis. Crises are vacuums, right? Like Srečko and Yanis were saying earlier, it's a space for change, and there's no reason why fate has predetermined for the worst in our society to take up that space. However, having said that, it looks like the worst in our society is far better organized than us. And we need to acknowledge that we are behind as progressives in terms of our coordination, in terms of our ability to make the most of opportunities. So I think we also need to treat these guidelines and this foundation that we're building for the movement with a lot of care, because it is based on whether or not these structures will work that we will know whether or not DiEM25 will be able to make the most of the opportunity that is coming our way with this awful crisis that is unfolding as a result of the pandemic and the failure of us dealing with the previous crisis successfully. So, it sounds like bad news, but I think it is a message of hope in that it's not predetermined. The future could be ours, but we need to structure ourselves and work in such a way that we can make the most of the opportunities that are coming our way, and they are coming our way. So yeah, that's it for me. If any of you have any further points on any of these documents, let us know. Otherwise, they'll be on the forum tomorrow. And I encourage all of our members who might be watching to engage with these documents and let us know whether they are happy with them or not, because it will be the foundation on which we will need to work and we will have to take very seriously going forward.
Yanis?
Sergio lifted his arm just before me. Okay, look, very quickly, what's happening with the letters, with the questionnaires? Have these been sent? Are we going to upload them?
Yes, it's been done. It's all on the website. It's called People's Gatherings. There is a dedicated page on the website just for this.
I think we should communicate this more broadly to non-DMers, to say, listen, this is the kind of discussion we have about your country. in DiEM.
Well, Yanis kind of did it already. It's called, you can go to our website and it's one of the main tabs at the top of the website. It's called People's
Thank you,
Gatherings.
Julian. I will
Yeah, Juliana shared it as well.
I will, yeah. Okay.
Maybe someone can share it on the YouTube channel. David, if you're still listening, I think you are. Please share it on the YouTube channel for people to see as well. The link to People's Gatherings.
I will, do my best to promote it.
Yeah, I quickly just wanted to congratulate Eric and everyone who was involved so much in preparing the 5-year plan. Thanks a lot. And also to all the members and the feedback which we collected. I think it's quite symbolic that at our 5-year anniversary, we are finally starting to implement something what, well, in Eastern Europe or Southern Europe, it would be called petoljetka, which means a 5-year plan. I think it's really important because even if we are constantly living in this kind of situation where everything is urgent, if you have an earthquake, you cannot really think 10 years ahead, for instance. But I think we have the duty to plan in advance in the same way China is planning 20 years ahead and so on. I think the progressives, so Eric, you're completely right. We need better structures, better organization. And I think the 5-year plan, which was developed, is going in that direction. So I'm really happy about it. And maybe last but not least, it wasn't in the agenda, maybe just for our audience and members, we are continuing with DiEM25. Each week we will have a new show. Also the new shows, Watch It, Faces of DiEM, Mehran shows, and many others. I think they're a really good contribution to what we want to do, which is engaging our members more and also reaching a broader audience outside of the DiEM bubble. So yeah, I think that's the good news as well. The DiEM25, which already reached more than 2 million people, is going on. So yeah.
Yeah, great. This sounds like a brighter look in the future, which we needed on this CC call, which is going to be ended now. If there is no any other businesses or anybody wants to say something, I would thank you all for attending here on the screen and also at the YouTube channel, and would like to thank you also for your questions and your patience, and hope to see you very soon back there, perhaps at the anniversary. We're having a drink together, and yeah, have a good evening. Bye bye, guys.
Bye bye, and thanks Claudia for the moderation.